Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Joining me today as we take a dive into the world of health and fitness, where we learn how to overcome adversity to pick that first fiction and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Welcome, guys. We have another great episode for you. We haven't done a success story in a while, so today is going to be a really fun self journey, we'll say, for our amazing guest today. So without further ado, let's introduce them. Welcome to the show, David Richman. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks, Anthony. Excited to talk to you. Let's get to it.
Yeah, we want to hear all about you and what you have done, and hopefully it motivates our listeners to say, hey, you know what? I can get up in the morning and do what I need to get done. So just tell us a little bit about yourself pre-all self journey. Who's David
Yeah,
Richman?
sure. Thanks. So, everybody's got a starting point for how they define their lives, right? It started as a kid or as an adult or somewhere in between. Mine kind of started in my late 30s. So by that time, I'd been through quite a number of different struggles and successes in life, but I was in a really bad place. I was overweight. I was a smoker, had been a smoker and overweight for about 20 years, never did anything athletic. My personal life was completely stressed out. I was married to an abusive alcoholic. I had 4-year-old twins. It was getting really volatile, dangerous for me and the kids, and I had to get us out of there. And it was really, really bad situation. On the plus side, I was successful at work. Life was going pretty good. I had accomplished a few things, so that was pretty good. But behind the closed door, man, things were really rough. And I had a conversation. I'm sure, Anthony, you've had one of these with one of your clients, or your clients has had one with you, where you know something, but you don't know it until they tell you in the right way. Like that could be life changing, something that is just like bam, it just hits you. And I had a friend of mine, when I was complaining about all my troubles, say, he just jumped in my face and he said, "Look, dude, I've been listening to you for 4 years complaining about the same thing." He goes, "I got to tell you something. You're the problem." And I went, "What are you talking about?" I was ready to take him down, right? I'm like, "What do you mean I'm the problem?" And I listed all these problems that I was having. And he goes, "Yeah, you're the problem." He goes, everything in your life is like a wild animal." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "All your problems, they're like wild animals, man. And you go find wild animals, you go pick them up, you bring them home, you feed them, you clean them, you make them all safe and comfortable, and then you go to pet them and they bite you." He goes, "Wild animals bite. That's what they do." He goes, "Why don't you stop finding wild animals and figure out what your own problems are?" And I'm like, "Oh." So that started me on a journey, Anthony, where I decided, like, yeah, I got to start looking at the guy in the mirror and wondering what that guy's all about, rather than all these other problems I'm trying to fix that are not fixable. And that started me on a journey of athletics, and here I am, nearly 20 years later, and having done hundreds and hundreds of athletic events, including Ironmans and 100-mile runs and 5,000-mile bike rides and all kinds of crazy things.
Let's go back to that conversation right there, because there's a little more in there,
Mm-hmm.
because I've experienced a lot of that. So you hear he's telling you this story, right? You at the end of the day of that work day, you go home, and that's probably just stirring in your mind.
Yeah.
At what point, either that night or the next morning, did you make a conscious decision? Okay, now I'm going to do something. And what was that something that you did?
Yeah, that's super insightful, because you can't just, and when you're moved to your core, like I had, look, boy, a lot of guys think like we got to fix things, and a lot of guys can't admit that they have the problems, or whatever. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. We don't need to go into all of it, but I actually never really thought that it was possible that I was the problem. How was I the problem? I'm the good guy. I got good intentions. I'm doing the right thing. There's no possible way I could be the bad guy, right? There's no way that I'm the problem. But when he said it to me, it just kind of hit me. And that actually, that night, Anthony, I went home, I made dinner for the kids, because by then, like, I was a couple of weeks out of getting out of that situation, that bad house, and starting a divorce. And I put my kids to bed, and I literally, Anthony, I went into the bathroom and I closed the door, and I probably looked like an idiot, but I looked in the mirror and I'm like, dude, what's your problem? Like, who are you? And I probably spent an hour talking to myself, and I was like, all right, here's what's good about you. And let's be honest. Let's be honest. Figure out your shit. Like, what is your problem? Like, what are you? And I just listed all the things. Like, why is it that you always attract people that you got to fix? Why is it that you don't believe that anybody else could take care of the problem but you? Why is it that you get bored when you're not challenged and you sabotage the situation? Why? And I started listing all these things that were my faults and also my good side. And I just said, all right, now what do you want to go do and who do you want to be? And I was like, I have no idea. I had no idea. No direction, no intention, no like passion that I was pursuing, nothing. I was just floating along dealing with problem to problem. And then that's I said, okay, well, let's go find out what you need to go do.
What did
Okay.
you decide that first problem was that you had to fix?
The first problem I had to fix was to stop smoking.
Why was that
And
the first conscious decision?
you know why? Because a couple of days earlier, my daughter asked me if I would quit smoking, and the way that happened was I had twins. They were just turning 5, like maybe right a month before 5 or so. And a couple of months earlier, my sister had been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And somehow, some way, as little kids do, they find out little nuggets of information that don't mean anything, and then they say things that just blow your mind. And I was getting a little bit concerned that my daughter was sucking her thumb, and I said, "Yo, Danielle, you got to stop sucking your thumb." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, I don't want you to get cancer. Why don't you stop smoking?" And I
Wow.
went, "Oh shit, you're 5 years old, man. You're not supposed to tell me that." But yeah, like I'd known for years I should quit smoking, but it never like hit me. And so a couple days later, I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. And this was after this talk in the mirror. I said, you stop sucking your thumb and I'll stop smoking. So I knew that was the first thing I had to do.
And did you follow through with that, or did you have cycles where you went back in and back out?
One of my positive or negative traits, Anthony, is I hate to fail. So I usually will only try something I know I can do. And if I don't know I can do it, I will figure out a way not to fail. So when I quit smoking, I didn't want to fail at it. So I never smoked again. The last cigarette I smoked, I never smoked another one. So it was really easy because I mean, first of all, how guilty would I feel lying to my 5-year-old, right?
I'm sure she sucked your thumb.
She continued to suck her thumb. She did not hold up her end of the bargain, but she was only 5, right? So I got to cut her some slack. But I felt like I couldn't lie to her, and I couldn't lie to myself, and I didn't want to fail because if it becomes okay to fail, you see this with your clients all the time. If it becomes okay to fail, that becomes a habit, right? And it's like if you don't go to the gym, it's easier to not go to the gym. But if you figure out a way to go to the gym, you always figure out a way to go. I mean, right? So I just didn't want to fail at it. So I stopped smoking, and then to help me stop smoking, I said, well, okay, you can't run being a smoker. So go buy a pair of running shoes, and that's what started it.
Nice. And you just picked up running straight from there.
Yeah. Now, did I fail at running? Oh yeah, because I was overweight. I was probably 60 pounds overweight, and I've been smoking for 20 years. So I get my running shoes on, and I'm thinking, all right, I can go do this, and I figure I'll be back in about an hour. And I made it like down the block before I passed out. I literally, no joke, dude. I could not make it around the block. So then I made it 2 minutes, and then I made it 5 minutes, and then 8, and then I was able to run a mile, and then 2 miles, and then 5 miles, and then just one thing led to another.
That's awesome. So let's jump forward a little bit, right? You got yourself out of that relationship you were in. You started running a little bit.
Mhm.
And one of the things you told me pre-show, which kind of blew my mind, you biked across the US. So walk us through how you just made that conscious decision, heck, I'm going to bike. And then I want to hear that journey about how you did, because that's mental fortitude, biking across the US. That's not an easy task.
It's either stupidity or mental fortitude, right? One or the other, man. Because it's brutal. It was a brutal trek. So fast forward, I got kind of not addicted, but I got drawn to the idea of what could I accomplish if I wanted to accomplish it for me. Because I lived my whole life going, man, I work harder to make the boss happy, or I got to do this so that the person in my life is happy, or everything's for other people. And when I started doing it for me, I was just like, wow, this is kind of cool. Let me see what I can do. And so 5 miles became a half Ironman, became a full Ironman, and then became multiple Ironmans. And then I said one day, hey, I wonder what it'd be like to run 50 miles. So I ran 50 miles. I wonder what it'd be like to run 100 miles. So I did 100 miles. And so I felt like I could do these crazy endurance athletic events because I was really interested in seeing how far I could push myself. So in the later stages of preparing for a book I was writing, it's called Cycle of Lives, and I interviewed 15 people about their emotional journeys with cancer, and I interviewed them over about a 2-year period, 18 months, 2 years. And as part of what I discovered is that it's my opinion, Anthony, that humans are only connected by two things. We're connected by story. Who doesn't love a good story, right? That goes back to before we knew how to write, right? Everybody loves a good story. And the second thing is we're all connected by emotion. We maybe don't have the same emotional responses, but we have the same emotions. And so when I got near the end of the book, preparing to write the book, after all the interviews are done, I said, oh, well, why don't I connect all the stories by connecting the people? And how can I connect the people? I'm like the red line, like in one of those movies where the character flies from place to place and the red line follows him. So I said, what if I bike across the country and zigzag my way to go meet everyone and talk a little bit about that when I write the book? And so that's what I did. I set a course, and I went to as many hospitals, care centers, and the people that I talked to on the preparing for the book, and then I just biked like 120 miles a day, 41 out of 45 days to get where I needed to get each day to make my way from California, halfway down Florida, in Tampa, across to Orlando, and then up to New York.
Wow. And you just basically took the life stories of all these cancer survivors in the hospitals and connected them through a 45-day bike ride. Is that correct?
Yeah, the only thing that would say is that not each one of the book participants was a survivor. A couple of them were oncologists and medical professionals. There
Okay.
was a couple of nurses, and a couple of them were the family members of people who had gone through cancer. And so I wanted that perspective of what's the emotional experience. How do we better connect to people that have trauma or have had trauma? Because oftentimes the things that we're going through today um, are affected by our young adult, childhood, adolescent traumas. And when we say we don't know what people have gone through, we have no idea. And when they're through something difficult, it's really hard to connect with them on an emotional level, right? Um, how do you talk to people about traumatic things? We normally just we want to exit the conversation, right? I was just talking about this last night at dinner. I was out to dinner with some friends and his wife, and they have one child. They want a big family, and all their peers are all big families, and they having some fertility issues. And I go, "What's that like?" And they go, "It's freaking lonely, man. Nobody talks to us because they don't want to brag about their kids, and they know we're trying to have kids, and they don't know what to say, and like real comfortable, and it kind of sucks because it's very lonely, and we're okay. It's not like it's no problem. People are avoiding us, and that's what we tend to do. We tend to avoid people who are going through trauma, and whatever that trauma is. And so I wrote the book so that we could understand maybe a little bit more about how to connect with people that are having difficult times.
That's very emotional. Like I totally can empathize with all of that because you really don't know people's stories until you really get to talk to them and understand them. And maybe this is what or part of the reason of why I always overshare my life. And I'm a big
Mhm.
believer in not keeping secrets or things breasted about traumas, issues, things that have happened in my childhood. Because one, it helps me get over it. Like I don't care anymore because I've talked about it freely and the world knows at this point. And two, if even if it is embarrassing to a certain point, maybe one person listened to it and took something away from it and then learned and grew from that. And if I can
Yeah,
help
because
one person, that's the biggest impact in the world.
yeah, but you're going to, because your trauma is not understandable by anybody. But you know what? What a lot of people do, and I'm sure you experienced this, I experienced this, was you sit there going, I can't share this stuff because nobody knows, nobody has any idea what I've been through. And what you don't realize until you realize it is everybody's thinking that same thing. Everybody had trauma, everybody had issues, and you can't measure yours against somebody else's, right? Because I've told people stories about my young adult and childhood, and they just completely go like, "What the hell are you even talking about? How did you deal with that?" And then I go, "Well, I'm just living my life. Like that's happened, and I figured out how to get through it." And then on the rebound, I hear something about life, and I'm like, "Dude, like how in the world did you do that?" Right? And so to know means that we understand it's not alone. We're not alone, and we don't, I mean, that inside voice in your head dealing with trauma is way meaner and unkind than the other people you talk to. No way anybody hears your story and beats you up the way you used to beat yourself up when you didn't talk about it, right? And so talking about it has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that kind of leads me into before we get into the next part of this bike ride, but just a little bit of if you need help with nutrition services, guys, if you're looking for that extra step, you want to get ahead, reach out to us at www.redefinedfitness.com. That's www.redefine-fitness.com. What we offer is two programs. One's a basic, one's an advanced. The basic, you'll get monthly access to one of our trainers, and we're going to help you create habits. We talk about how diets don't work, and they don't. Instead, I want to teach you how to be able to eat right for the rest of your life. And that's ultimately the goal about what we offer. Our advanced program gives you a little bit more for those that want more of a hand-holding experience. That gives you 24/7 access to your coach. That means if you're at a restaurant and you have a menu in front of you and you're out to eat with a couple of friends, you're on a date, you stop a picture of that menu, send it over to your coach, and they're going to answer you saying, hey, let's try to stick around options A or B and let you pick that way so you don't look at a menu and go, oh my God, what do I eat? So we're here for you guys. We're here to create habits. We understand that everyone likes the things they like. I drink beer and I still have a very, very healthy life. So it is very important to make sure you learn how to eat, you learn how to track your food properly, and you're not starving yourself or following any fad diets, just ultimately going to lead you to failure. We're going to jump right back into your story there, David. I want to talk a little more about you, right? So the trauma issue, I couldn't agree with more, and it's definitely worth listening to other people. But let's talk about the bike ride itself, right? So
Yeah.
you must have had days where you're just questioning everything because there's parts of the US which I can just only imagine are straight uphill the entire day. So walk us a little through about how you pushed and how many times a day you said, why the am I doing this? I need to quit.
Oh, absolutely, man. You want to quit 1,000 times, right? You want to quit 1,000 times, and maybe a couple of people are watching, maybe a couple of people care, but really nobody's watching, nobody cares. But you're gonna always know, so you can't quit, right? I mean, you can't unless you have to, right? There was one day I had to quit, and boy, my wife was supporting me along the road. I ended up getting divorced and 10 years on my own, figuring my crap out and kind of evolving and transforming. Then I met, kind of the greatest person ever. And we've been married for a bit now. and she was and a friend of mine, her and a friend of mine were supporting me along the way. And I was going up this crazy mountain in Arizona, and it was hot, and I was tired, and I hadn't had a day off. It was no day, Anthony, was the high was not lower than 100. It was over 100 degrees because I was going through the desert, the whole thing. And I'm working my way up this mountain, and I'm absolutely toast. I mean, I'm toast. It's so bad that I laid my bike down on the side of the highway to try to take a 15-minute nap, and I ended up napping for 2 hours. It was stupid. And then I get to the end of the where I'm going to be, like, I don't know, near the end of the top of the mountain, and then I had another 25 miles to go. And I called them and I said, "You got to come get me. I don't feel good." And it was about 85 degrees out at that time at night, and I was freezing cold. I lost so much electrolyte and so much fluid that I couldn't regulate my body temperature, and I was getting hypothermia, and it was really bad. But I convinced them to let me keep going. They drove me to the hotel. I got better overnight. Went back to where I quit, and then I added those miles to the next day. But it's tough, man. It part of it, Anthony, and you know this, but part of your passion is mentally fulfilling, and it feeds the mental part of you. But physically, man, your body does have limits, and I pushed up against those limits many days. I'll tell you, like, how uphill the US is. I'll tell you the absolute truth. If you're trying to bike across the country, I don't care which direction you're going, the wind is going to be in your face. It's it's freaking brutal, man. It's literally brutal. I couldn't every single day I'd be like, I'm heading due east, and the wind is coming due out of the east. And then I go, oh great, tomorrow I'm heading, starting my way down from Dallas to Austin, so I'm heading south, and the wind comes in from the south. And then I go, oh, that's okay. I'm going northeast over to Houston, and the wind's coming out of northeast. I mean, every day into the wind, dude, and 4 and 5 flats a day. It was miserable. But
Were you
it
on
was also
highways, or did you try to avoid like the big freeways and stay more on the side roads?
so. One of the things I do today when I'm biking is I get freaked out really easy. A siren comes on, or a truck horn goes, and I literally jump out of my skin. It's because I was on highways. There's no way to get from point A to point B without on highways, unless you're. I mean, how do you make it through the Arizona desert? How do you make it through that wacky state of Texas without being on highways? You can't, because you'd be on dirt roads if there were even roads. So, yeah, I was on highways, and it's really traumatic because you're hearing cars whizzing by, trucks whizzing by 80 miles an hour, 4 feet to your left, and it's freaky, man. It really freaks you out, and especially when they start hitting the drunk bumps, and you're like, oh, I hope they notice they're drifting, because I don't want to get run over. So yeah, it was really scary, but it's safe. I mean, I only nearly died twice, but who doesn't have a couple of those stories? Uh,
That's definitely an experience that, and just a plain curiosity question. Then we're gonna move on. I
yeah.
feel like if anyone did what you did, it wouldn't be the end of the journey that would be the hardest. I feel like it would be day 3 or 4, right when you had really bad muscle soreness in the first couple of days and your body's not regulated to it, and you just
Yeah.
aren't moving. Is that accurate, or is it more
It's
later?
it's totally accurate. Now, if you're a super well conditioned elite athlete, then you have an ability to absorb training during your endurance events. Tour de France riders, for example, they can increase their fitness during high levels of exertion, but they're also only exerting themselves 4 to 6 hours a day, and they're recovering. But for a normal, guy in the middle of the pack or dude like me, you don't really absorb your training. It just accumulates. And so you're exactly right that the lactic acid just never seemed to ever be able to exit my body. each day, and it was brutal, man. It was by the end of it, like if you could imagine anybody that's a cyclist, you know this. So when I was like near the end, like Philadelphia on up to New York City, a lot of lights, a lot of streets, a lot of lights, and a lot of stops. And so I would stop, Anthony, and I would start pedaling, and the lactic acid buildup in my legs was so heavy that I had to start in the lightest gear and go, and just flush out the acid, flush, flush, flush. And then finally I could start moving and move into a heavier gear, one click at a time until I was okay. But if I had to stop again, it'd be, I can't even move my legs. Lightest gear, super slow, and then build to a normal pace. I was toast. And literally, I'm not even exaggerating. It took me a year to recover. Like I was hobbling for like a year, man. It was crazy. Maybe not hobbling for a year, but I was deeply fatigued for a year.
It's a great story, and I just feel like there's more to it. So, what was after that? I mean, that in and of itself is amazing. What was the next step that you took, and what are something you'd like other people to know?
Well, I guess that the next thing I did was I took some time off. I wrote the book and I've been working on that project for a few years. Getting the word out and all that, and all the proceeds from the book go to charity. So all the different book participants picked a cancer focused charity that they wanted the money to go to. So I said, all right, we'll put 100% of what comes in out to these cancer organizations, and I continue to do events. I still do Ironmans and half Ironmans. In fact, I got a crazy event coming up in 2.5 weeks, and doing something I labeled the 59er because now I'm freaking old. I'm 59, and I want to do something epic before I turn 60. So I'm doing a 59er. So on July 8th, I'm biking 59 miles. Then I'm gonna jump in the pool, after bike, and swim 5,900 meters, which is like 3.7 miles. And I'm gonna jump out of the pool and put my shoes on and go run 59 miles. So I'm gonna do all three of those back to back to back. And so I figure like you can press yourself to do whatever. My advice, like just set high enough goals. I love what you said about like habits, and you can't try something and get long-term effects from it, right? A fad diet or a couple of workouts or some newfangled diet pill or whatever. You can't do that, right? You just keep pushing yourself and keep doing the right activities. You're not going to believe what you can accomplish. Like people look at me like, you're going to go run 59 miles? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can do it. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but I'm not saying you should want to, but you could do it if you wanted to, right?
I love it. And then I guess to kind of start wrapping this up is what would be your message to people listening, like those that feel like they just can't get ahead, or maybe they just started and
Hmm.
they're thinking they're listening to your story and go, I will never do that. So how do you talk to those people? I want you to just, how do we get the message through to them that there is a way to do this, and we're not special people?
Well, that absolutely not even close to special, right? I mean, absolutely not. It's just that you choose to do something that you're holding yourself accountable to. And I don't know. Look, I told you this when I first looked in the mirror that day, but I could tell you this now that there's three things. One, like have an honest assessment. Like I mean, let's be honest. You are where you are in your life, and this is where you're at. Like be honest, right? And just say this is what I'm doing right, this is what I'm doing wrong, and take assessment. The second thing is I feel like you need to just forgive yourself that you're not wherever you think you might want to be. Right? You didn't know any better. Right? You didn't get in shape 20 years ago because you just didn't. Right? You didn't start eating good 3 years ago because you didn't. Like just free your mind and forgive yourself and just let it go. Man. It doesn't matter. You're right here today. Be where your feet are. Like just forgive yourself, right? Because you didn't know any better. If you knew any better, you would have done it, but you didn't know better, or you didn't understand it, or whatever. So just free your mind. Just let it go. Today's the one. And then the third part is, I mean, who doesn't want to be their best selves? Who doesn't want to live their best life? And if you're free to do that, you forgive yourself for not doing it before, you free your mind and you lean into who can I become, you're going to be empowered by that. And you're going to be energized by that. And so we're good at fooling ourselves. Oh, it's too late. I can never do that. Like, I don't have time for this. It's all bullshit. You have time for whatever's important to you. And if you want to start at 38 and become a runner and stop smoking, you'll do it. If you're 22 years old and never worked out, start working out, right? If you're 60 and you want to figure it out, go figure it out. Like, you can do it. It's just, you just gotta be honest, and you just gotta forgive yourself if you didn't do it before. That'll give you the freedom to just go after it. That's my opinion.
I'm going to add something to that, which you mentioned earlier, but I'm just going to reiterate it, which is don't let yourself quit. Don't feel like you're the person that quits things. Take the next thing you do, whatever habit that is in the right direction that you're looking to fix, and convince yourself you are not a quitter. You can do this. And no matter how many times you self-talk and say, no, I'm going to quit, I'm going to quit, I'm going to quit, take a step back and say, no, I'm going to start doing things right and moving forward. And I've experienced this in my own life, and I'm sure you can totally agree with me. Little habits like exercising and convincing myself not to quit, or doing a Spartan race that is nothing near what you do. But to the point of that, I said I couldn't do it and I did it and I made it, has added in my personal and business life and helped that a lot, because it's the same thing. I wanted to quit my gym business 100 million times. And it was, what am I doing? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't deserve to do this, and this, and this. And it was a reminder that, hey, you made it through so much before and you didn't give up on yourself. Why are you going to give up now? And that really helped me push through. And that's what we are even with this podcast. We're 3.5 years in, guys. Like,
Yep.
That's crazy. I could have quit episode 7. So just
Right.
a little, just keep pushing on one thing, and then everything else in your life, you're going to have, it's going to be easier for you to move forward on that.
Yeah, you're so right. There's something so cool about absorbing that kind of mentality, right? Because like I said earlier, when it's okay to fail, you're gonna fail. And when it's okay to not fail, you're gonna not fail. Like, it's pretty amazing. Let me tell you one super quick story. I know we're getting to the end of it, but I'll tell you a super quick story. One of the first endurance events that I did during this journey was an 87-mile rollerblade race. Now, first of all, I got no business being on rollerblades. And second of all, who goes on 87 miles? I did it to impress a chick, but whatever. Athens, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia on rollerblades. Completely stupid. So about 30 miles in, I hit the wall, and I hit the wall in the majorest way possible. I was completely depleted of energy. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I didn't understand hydration, nutrition. I was not prepared for it at any way possible. It was hot, and I just leaned over perpendicular to this hill because I couldn't be straight to the hill. I'd have rolled backwards, and I leaned on my knees, and I'm sweating a pig, and there's this just pool of sweat, and it turns into a line on the asphalt. And I'm just like, man, I gotta quit. I gotta quit. Like, I can't take another step. And then I did what you said. I said, I figure out a way, take one step. And I go, if you could take one step, dude, you're gonna learn something, because you're gonna enter territory you never existed, because you were so far beyond quit that you take another step, look at what you overcame. And I went, oh shit, that's kind of cool. So I took a step, and then I went, if you can get one more, you're going to learn something new. So every time that you don't quit, you learn something new about yourself. And I, like you wanted to 100 times on your business, I wanted to quit that race 1,000 times, right? But every time I didn't, I learned something new, how I could overcome the desire to quit. And 6 hours later, I made it to the finish line. I was a wreck, but I made it to the finish line, and I learned 1,000 times how not to quit. That became a little bit more of a habit, right? Because if it was okay to quit, I would have learned everything I knew about myself, what my limits were, where I should quit. But now I don't know that anymore, because I learned 1,000 times that day, don't quit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and very similar story. Ran my first Spartan Beast, 13 miles up a mountain with obstacle courses, and normally that wouldn't have been such a big deal. But my wife and I dropped the ball. We didn't realize that this is the one event they don't supply water and nutrition along the way, which the
Oh
other
my goodness.
events they do. So we show up thinking they're gonna have water stops, all this stuff. We get about halfway through. We're like,
Where?
where's a hydration station? And we see
Oh,
everyone else
shit.
with water packs, and we're like, shit, it's 86 degrees outside. We're on a
Oh,
giant mountain in New Jersey, and we're just going straight uphill. And I'll never forget, we made it to mile marker 8. I vividly remember mile marker 8. It was covered in mud, and I blacked out. I couldn't tell you from mile marker 8 to mile marker 12 what happened. I have
oh
no
my
idea.
goodness.
I just have little flashbacks of I couldn't move, and I just did one step, and then another step, and then another step, and a little sprint and walk, and a little sprint, and everything in my body hurt. And then all of a sudden, mile marker 12 hit. I remember vividly seeing that one again, and it was a sandbag carry for a mile right to the
Oh,
end. And I said, fuck it. I made it this far. I'm finishing this race. I have a
yeah.
mile left. And we both just like rejuvenated ourselves and made it through. It took 7 hours to finish this course. And
Oh my, and you were so dehydrated and depleted at the end. It's fun, probably.
gone. We chugged like 12 gallons of water after we finished.
Yeah, right.
But we then
Yeah.
learned, like, you know what, like you said with the roller skating thing, it's like you don't realize even when you're shit toast, you're thrown on the ground. When you're that dehydrated, as you know, like every step sends sharp pain through your body.
Oh yeah.
It's just you just push.
Yeah, you figure out, and look, that bleeds over into your life, right? Because how many times you do stuff at work or at home, or you're dealing with major stress or trauma or whatever, and you can't quit. You have to figure it out. So how this helps you believe in yourself that you can continue, and it's just a positive thing, right? To be able to positively reinforce that you have the ability to not quit. You have the ability to overcome, and it's something that you're choosing to do. So that's even more, because hell, you told you to do this, so you're only doing it for you. It really makes it personal. Nobody cared if you and your wife quit. Nobody really cared, right? Nobody would judge you, but you would have said, okay, I found my limit. Now I know when I need to quit. But now you don't know when you need to quit yet, which is really cool, because it's going to bore you through a lot of difficult times.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, Dave, I'm going to ask you the final questions I ask everybody, which is the first
Yep.
question. If you were to summarize this podcast episode in 1 or 2 sentences, what is your take-home message?
I guess I would say that you and I didn't know what we were going to talk about. A hell of a conversation, so I'm pretty jazzed, and I appreciate this with you.
I appreciate that. And then the second question, how can people find you, get a hold of you, and find your books?
All my books are available on Amazon. Just look up David Richman. There's a couple David Richman, so find the handsome one, and go to they can go to cycleoflives.org. Cycleoflives.org. It talks about the cancer focused charities that we support. I do some expressive writing workshops and public speaking and that type of stuff if anybody's interested. But anything that comes in on Cycle of Lives goes out to charity. And yeah, that's you can find out. The books are on Audible, or regular books or bookstores or whatever. But if you're interested, I think the books are pretty inspiring. So yeah, or reach out to me and I'll send you one.
I appreciate that so much. David, thank you for coming on, and thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field. And remember, fitness is medicine. For us, we know what it's like to feel unhealthy, depressed, and downright defeated. We want to show others there is a right way, and through fitness, you could do anything you set your mind to. Fitness can give you that motivation, confidence, energy you need to bridge that mental gap and prevent you from missing important life events. We understand it's about feeling better, living longer, and being good examples for our kids. We understand this because we live it. And for us, that's the redefined difference. Until next time.